I can't believe the Trini Gardener spraying chemicals on his tomato plants. I don't think this is the Trini Gardener. This has to be some kind of imposter. Hello everyone, thank you all so much for joining in. This is indeed Dylan from the Trini Gardener channel, and there is no need to panic. I am not applying any chemicals to my garden. What I'm doing here is I am applying worm tea in my garden, and it's an entirely organic fertilizer that's not going to harm yourself, your family, your plants, or the environment. In last week's YouTube video, I showed you all exactly how I make my own homemade worm tea with two simple, cheap ingredients that anybody can get in Trinidad. I also talked about what the reason for using worm tea is in your garden and how it can benefit you and the overall environment that you have going on in your backyard or front yard garden. Now, in this week, because last week I didn't have enough time to talk about it, I'm going to be showing you how I use worm tea, how I process the worm tea, and then how I apply it in the garden. There are two main ways that I like to do it, and I'm going to be showing you that in this video. Stick around. I'm here in this little crevice because it's a perfect spot with enough shade to protect my worm tea. If you remember from last week's video, you need to have good shade for your worm tea so that the sun doesn't bake off the microorganisms that we're trying to breed in mass in this worm tea here. I have been stirring this, as I told you all, for the past 3 days. I think it's been now almost about 3 days, about 2.5 into 3 days, and I've been coming out and stirring this every 7 hours, or making sure that somebody in the house stirs this worm tea so that it doesn't go anaerobic. I'm going to be putting up a link so that if you haven't seen last week's video, you can go watch it and then come back here, because a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today are not going to make as much sense until you see last week's video on making your own homemade worm tea. So once your worm tea is pretty much ready, as I said, at the end of 2.5 into 3 days, your worm tea is good to go. You're going to want to not just use your worm tea directly in your garden. The reason being that if you want to put it into one of the two main tools that I use, it's already full. So that's why it's kind of heavy. So I have my watering can here, and I also have my sprayer, right? For both of these things here, you're not going to want to put anything that has any particles in it. But if you remember, we put worm castings in the worm tea. That's how we get worm tea to begin with. So we're going to just strain it. What I like to do is I like to take a watering can and then just place a film into the hole of the watering can. That way I'm going to be using that as a filter. This is, I think, an old urnie or some kind of headdress that one of my aunts gave me. So I'm just going to stick this down inside here, and then I start pouring one of these buckets into the watering can itself. Okay, this is normally going to be a perfect amount to give me just under half of the watering can filled with liquid, and I'm just going to pour this in. And as you can see, there's the remnants of the worm castings that I put into the worm tea itself. Of course, the molasses would have completely dissolved, but the worm castings are going to leave dregs. Now, if you don't filter out these dregs, then they're going to get caught in your watering can nozzle, or they're going to get caught in your sprayer, and that's going to be a nightmare to have to clean that out afterwards. So the best thing is to make sure that when you're pouring in, that you filter it out, and even afterwards, if you're pouring like into your sprayer and you see, like in this case here, there is some dregs, I'm just going to not use that at all so that it doesn't create a problem for me in the future. Okay, once my watering can is filled up with the almost about, let's say just about a third or a little bit more with worm tea, I'm going to get some rainwater, and I'm mixing the rainwater with the worm tea. So this is what you would call a 1-to-1, almost a 1-to-1, maybe a 1 to 1.5 relationship between the amount of worm tea I have inside here and the amount of rainwater. Why do we need to use rainwater and not pipe water? If you don't know why, go and look at my last week's video on making worm tea and you'll understand why. But pretty much it's just not going to be good if you use tap water or anything that has chlorine in it. We want rainwater or unfiltered water alone when we're applying worm tea. Now, in the same way, I'm going to be putting now in my sprayer. I generally like to go a little bit stronger with the concentration. So this is pretty much just about 1 worm tea to 1 rainwater in terms of the ratio. So pretty much half and half worm tea and rainwater mixing in here. So it's going to be a bit stronger. The reason for that, and we're going to talk about it now, is that there are two main ways to apply your worm tea to your garden. The first way is via a foliar spray. Now, what's a foliar spray? A foliar spray is just simply spraying on the leaves of your plants. Plants have the ability to take up nutrients via their leaves, pores in the leaves itself, and it's really good for your plants. People often apply different kinds of fertilizer to their plants via the leaves, and that is completely fine. In this case here, we're doing an entirely organic fertilizer, the worm tea, and applying that to the leaves of the plant. The second way is you can use something like a watering can and apply that to the roots, and that's called a root drench. So we're drenching the roots with the worm tea to make sure that the worm tea gets down into the roots. And especially for me, I prefer to do the root drench because when I use worm tea, I'm not using it as much for the nutrients, but I'm using it for the microorganisms that I want to go down into the soil and build and cultivate that strong ecosystem. Whether it's a container, whether it's in the ground, doesn't matter. I want to have a strong ecosystem whereby I have microorganisms that are taking care of my plants. They're giving food, they're nourishing the plants, and they're also protecting the plants with the good bacteria and the good fungi that we have just nurtured in the worm tea itself. Now, if you don't have a watering can or a sprayer at home, you don't need to go out and buy one just for worm tea. If you've made the worm tea, you already invested the money to get your worm castings and your molasses, and you did the entire process, then that's fine. Just simply batch out your worm tea, dilute it with the worm tea rainwater. Perfect ratios, whatever you decide is better for your garden. 1:1, one worm tea to one container of water. That's fine. That's really good. It's going to be really strong. If you want to dilute it, one worm tea to two containers of water of the equal size as your worm tea to stretch out your worm tea a bit more. That's also completely fine. And just put it into a bucket and just root drench your crops directly. Nothing is wrong with that. I just like to do the watering can and the sprayer, one because I happen to have the materials here, but if I didn't have it, that would not mean I could not use the worm tea in the garden. It's better to apply the worm tea in whatever way that you are able to than not applying it at all. So definitely try it out if you have ever used worm tea in your garden. And if you have any questions about how I use my worm tea here, you have another suggestion about a good way to use worm tea, please leave a comment below. I'm so excited to learn from all the experienced gardeners that we have watching the channel. Remember, if you know somebody who would be interested in growing more healthy organic food for themselves and their family, feel free to share this video and the channel with them to help them provide more and be more self-sustainable with themselves and their family. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and on Facebook for more content coming out of the Trini Gardener's Garden. And we're so happy when you tag us in your pictures and videos of your harvest or just working in the garden with yourself, with your family. So motivating. It's such an encouragement to see you all doing your thing in your gardens. Remember, as always, this has been Dylan from the Trini Gardener channel reminding you to get up and get growing. Take care.